Back in 2023, I started an AI model project. I began scraping a dataset and I had a proper timeline in which I decided to do all of my tasks. So I'd complete the dataset here, I would build the architecture of the model here, I would train the model then, etc., etc. I had a proper timeline and I would come from school to work on it, I would polish it and all these things. It was going to be great. But then all of a sudden I found an error in my program, and this error happened to put me off of my flow, off of my timeline that I was following. And then eventually I was trying to fix this error for months and months and months on end, and it slowed my progress down, the fact that I was not using a calendar. And eventually I decided, you know what, I'll just move on to another idea that I have. Let me show you the code files that I had, or at least this file is pretty much all you will need to see. But so look at this. It actually looks quite intelligent, right? You have the inputs layer, you have the transformer layer, you have training over here. The first thing that I did wrong is that I had an incorrect model build. The way I trained this model was incorrect. I don't know if I can show it here, but the way I trained the model was absolutely incorrect. And that was a fundamental error that I had missed. So I did not know that that was the problem. Looking back at the project now, I kind of understand that the most important thing to do is to thoroughly research into something like, because this is a very complicated type of project. I have to thoroughly research into it and don't rush, because as you can see, or maybe you can't see, but it was because of a lot of rushing that I didn't take my time to really understand what was wrong. Maybe my AI model is wrong. Maybe it's not just an unexplainable error. Maybe there's something fundamental about my structure that I overlooked. And so I've understood that I shouldn't rush and that I should take more time researching. And now look at this. We had the encoding, a record memory unit. You know, this would make sure that the AI was context aware at all times. You know, when you have the context window, at some point it runs out, and this was before we have like context windows of 1,000,000 tokens now. At some point it runs out, and so I would create this memory unit kind of feature where it would remember like slight points from the conversation that is now out of the context window. Like let's say the conversation is this long, this is the context window, but there's going to be slight memory points from that would be still available to the AI model to access. And so that was one of my ideas. It's kind of nice to remember. But another mistake that I made is that I trailed off the calendar, which is quite obvious. When I encountered this error with my training, specifically this error, what it is that when I would run the program, it would start training, but then eventually it would just stop. It would just bug out, and that's it. And the problem was an out of memory error, so the server computer that I was using could not process anymore. But regardless of that, what I've understood is that I should always follow a timeline. Even if I have an error, I should follow a timeline to try to fix that error, and not just kind of trail off with some kind of general idea in mind of, oh, okay, I will try to fix it. Oh, okay, I will look up some YouTube tutorials maybe, etc., etc. And so the last thing that I made a mistake on, which is actually quite common for many beginning coders to make, is that I quit. Actually, that was the mistake, because I hopped onto a different idea that I had instead of maybe continuing this process, this building process, and actually going through, because I could continue it. I could continue trying to build something original over here and then, you know, publish it and like integrate it into a website, into a desktop application, and like it would be possible had I not quit. And so that's the phenomenon of shiny object syndrome. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. I'm sure you have experienced those cases where you think, I'm quitting a project. And then now looking back a few months later, a year later, you're like, maybe I shouldn't have quit. Maybe I should have pushed harder. So yeah, do not make the same mistakes that I've made. If you do have a side project you're working on though, I suggest you try Stellar AI to help you out with that, because it will significantly accelerate your journey and help you to not abandon the project like I have.